Okay, now that you know how to compose your shot, you understand how to use angles and focal length, it's now time to talk about camera movements. And for my style of filmmaking, camera movements are a huge part of making my films look cinematic. So I'm going to show you everything from the tripod basics all the way up to the advanced glide cam and drone movements. So in this video, we're going to cover the very basics, tripod camera movements. There are 5 basic camera movements that you can achieve using a tripod. They are static, pan, tilt, zoom, and rack focus. Now, I personally don't use tripods that often because I like a lot of movement and tripods tend to limit how much I can move. However, there are times that I do use tripods, and so I'm going to go over each of these 5 movements and the times when I like to use them. The first is static. Static basically means the camera doesn't move at all. You stick it on the tripod and it just sits there. A time when I choose to use a static shot is when I'm doing time lapses because the motion over time makes up for the lack of movement from my camera. Another time I use static shots is when I'm shooting interviews and we're only focusing on the words that are being said, so we don't need a lot of movement. I'll also use static shots on simple music videos or commercials where the focus of my video is about the music or the words being said or sung, and sometimes too much movement in the camera can distract from the message that's coming across. I tend to use static shots more often when I'm using a high focal length where I'm super zoomed in, so if I tried to use any movement, it would be too shaky. I also like to use static shots to create optical illusions, like making multiple subjects appear in the same frame, and it's a lot easier to do this with static shots because you can just crop your image in half, leaving the camera in the exact same place and just doing 2 separate takes, and then splicing the 2 together in post, giving you some fun creative ways to do split screening. The second tripod movement is the pan, which is moving the camera from left to right or right to left. I often use this camera movement when I'm tracking a subject on a tight focal length because I can't be very close to the subject due to my surrounding environment. When filming activities that span over a long distance, I usually hop on a tighter focal length and pan with my subject. Panning is a very popular camera movement for action sports and activities because sometimes you can't be right next to the action, so you have to be on a long lens, which forces you to be on a tripod using the panning movement. The third tripod camera movement is the tilt, which is a movement going from down to up and up to down. Very similar to the pan movement. I often use this to track subjects where I can't get right next to the action, so I have to pop on a tighter lens and track them using a tilt. The fourth camera movement is the zoom in or the zoom out. And I'll use this when I want to establish more of the surrounding environment and then zoom in to fill the frame with my subject. People have asked me before if I'm using a motion rig to get moving time lapses, when in fact I shot them on a tripod, but I did the zooming in the editing room in post. And this is called a digital zoom. And it can be done by putting keyframes on your position and your scale, and then cropping in or cropping out on your image to create the illusion like you zoomed in with the camera. And I'll sometimes do a snap zoom, which is basically a faster version of just a normal zoom. And again, this creates a cool effect where you can see a lot of the surrounding environment, and then it zooms in to fill your frame with your subject. The snap zoom is a popular camera movement that's used on shows like The Office to help the viewer focus in on the subject. The fifth and final move is the rack focus, which means changing your focus mid-shot from one subject to another in your image. The rack focus is used when you have 2 different subjects that you want to give importance to in the same shot and can create an artsy, mysterious effect. I'll sometimes use the rack focus if I have a subject coming towards me or going away from me, allowing me to keep them in focus during the whole shot. And this is a great tool to shift the viewer's attention from one part of your image to another. Like I said, those are just your basic movements. I don't use them a ton. My favorite camera movements can be found using glide cams and drones and handheld movements. So stay tuned if you want to learn more advanced cinematic movements with your camera. That's it for tripod movements. If you guys have any further questions, please let me know.